Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. I am Daniel Faris from the EC5A IDI 2308004. In this video, me and my group mates Haris Amza, Said Danish and Husna Iman will be presenting about varieties of English in outer and expanding circle countries according to Kachur's three circles model. There are three aspects that we are going to present, which the history, development, and current progress of English in the respective countries, the expanding power of English, and the phonological features of localized English in the respective countries. For this project, we have decided to interview four native people from the chosen country to analyze whether the findings from the interview align or contradict to our research. We will be looking at four different countries, which are the Philippines and India from the outer circle, and Somalia and Syria from the expanding circle. So, without wasting any time, let's start with the first country, which is the Philippines. My subject name is Ika Eslabon. She is from the Philippines. She is 20 years old and currently studying as first year college student studying Doctor of Optometry. The reason why she is the right subject is because she has a strong knowledge in English language, making her well qualified to discuss the history, development, and current progress of English in her country. Other than that, she also has an experience with how English is used in education, media, and daily lives in the country. Let's look at the first aspect, which the history, development, and current progress of English. From my finding, English was introduced to the Philippines during the American colonial period, which began in 1898. The American administration established a public education system with English as the medium of instruction, aiming to modernize the country's education. This initiative included the arrival of American teachers known as Thomasites, who played a significant role in teaching and promoting the English language. Next, for the development, education, government, law, media, and pop culture have become the factors of the development of English in the Philippines. For current progress of English in the Philippines, English plays a central role in the Philippine education system, especially in higher education. Universities and colleges as use English as the primary medium of instruction for most courses, particularly in fields like science, business, law, and medicine. Academic materials including textbooks, research paper, and examinations are often written in English, requiring students to develop strong proficiency in the language. Let's see my subject's response from the interview.
English is taught as a second language in Philippines, starting from elementary school using a bilingual approach with Filipino. It is crucial for global communication, academic and professional opportunities, and cultural exchange. Proficiency in English is highly valued, and the Department of Education has implemented programs to improve English language instruction. This emphasis on English education prepares Filipino students for success in an increasingly globalized world.
From her response, it can be seen that English is taught as second language from elementary school using a bilingual approach, meaning Filipino and English is used in instruction. English is primarily used in subjects like science, mathematics, and literature, ensuring that students develop proficiency from an early age. She also said that English is essential for academic success as many subjects, especially in higher education, are taught in English. Next, I do ask my subject about how do younger generation perceive English. From my research, the younger generation in the Philippines is generally more fluent and comfortable in English due to their exposure to social media and digital platforms. Apps like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram expose them to English content daily, influencing how they communicate. Many young Filipinos use English in online conversations and even in casual speech. Let's see what my subjects had to say about this.
So, younger Filipinos perceive English as a vital tool for social media, online communication, and career advancement. They or we use English more casually and informally, often blending it with Filipino and other local languages. and this is different from older. Oh, sorry. This is different from the older generation who tend to use more formal and traditional English.
For the second response, she said that younger generations and older generations use English differently. While younger generation use English as a practical tool for digital communication and their exposure to social media, in contrast, older Filipinos tend to use formal and traditional English. In conclusion, her response is aligned with my research, where English plays a central role in the Philippine education system, especially in higher education, and the younger generation in the Philippines is generally more fluent and comfortable in English than the older generation. Moving on to the second aspect, the expanding power of English in the Philippines. From my finding, one of the sectors that English is most dominant in the Philippines is the Philippines has become a global leader in the business process outsourcing or BPO, particularly in call center due to its large pool of English-speaking professionals. Next, I do ask my subject, is English becoming common in casual conversation? From my finding, they practice code switching where they use Taglish. Taglish is a form of code switching that blends between English and Tagalog, commonly used in the Philippines. It is a natural way of speaking for many Filipinos, allowing them to express themselves more comfortably and effectively. They use this in their daily conversation, media, and even in advertising. Taglish is used in the TV shows and social media content. Let's see my subject's response.
Yes, English is becoming more common in casual conversation among Filipinos, especially among the younger generations and in urban areas. Code switching between English and Filipino or other local languages is also prevalent in everyday conversations.
From her response, she said that English is becoming more common in casual conversation, particularly among younger generation and those living in urban areas. This aligns with my research, where they combine Tagalog and English in their daily conversation. Furthermore, I do ask her about how important is English in the country. From my finding, English plays an important role in the Philippines and it remains key factor in securing high-paying jobs. Those with strong English skills often have better opportunities for career advancements and higher salaries. Apart from employment, English is also crucial for global communication. And this is what she had to say.
English remains highly valued in the Philippines and its importance continues to grow. As the country strengthens its ties with the global economy, English proficiency is becoming increasingly essential.
From her response just now, she emphasized that English is not just a historically important language, but also a key factor in the country's future development. Hence, it shows that my finding is aligned with her perspective about the importance of English in the Philippines. Moving on to the last aspect, the phonological features of Philippine English. In Philippine English, the theta sounds are often pronounced as the or the. It is because most native Philippines languages don't have these sounds. Next, word endings ed are often pronounced as id. Lastly, since Philippine language don't have the f and v sound, they substitute them with p and b sound. Let's see how my subject pronounce these words.
Becomes this, but becomes this, but is completed.
In the video, my subject pronounced the word this as this. This is because many Philippine language lack certain English sounds like th in thing and this. She also pronounced the word completed as completed. Other than that, non-rhoticity, the r sound at the end of the words or before consonants is often dropped. Lastly, diphthongs like a in face, or O in goat are often simplified into monophthongs, making face sound more like face and goat more like god. Let's hear how my subject pronounced this word.
Globalized world. Globalized world.
In the video, my subject pronounced the word world as world, where she drops the r sound before the consonant L. In conclusion, English is widely used in the Philippines, especially for the younger generation, and it remains important in daily life. English is also dominant in education, business, government, and media. Lastly, English serves as lingua franca in the Philippines. It is because it bridges communication between speakers of different regional languages. English provides a natural and widely understood medium for education, business, government, and international relations. Its role as an official language ensures nationwide accessibility, making it essential for professional and social interactions.
Hi everyone, my name is Zaid Danish Muhammad and the country that I chose is India. Reasons of choices why I chose India as my subject is because of its distinctive pronunciation patterns. Indian English has unique vowel and consonant variations influenced by native languages. Number 2 is influence of native languages. India has diverse languages like Hindi, Tamil and Bengali that shape English pronunciation. Number 3 is syllable time speech. Unlike stress-time English, Indian English tends to give equal emphasis to syllables. Number 4 is widespread use of English. India is one of the largest English-speaking countries, making its variation significant. Number 5 is my personal interest. I want to understand how English adapts across cultures and enhance linguistic knowledge. Now, here is my subject background. His name is Hamis Hashim. He is 27 years old and he is born and raised in India. His highest education is degree in engineering in IIT Kanpur. Now, let's see the first aspect, which is the history, development, and the current process of English. So, the history of the English language in India is deeply intertwined with British colonial rule and has significantly influenced the country's culture, education, and administration. The English language was introduced to India in the early 17th century with the establishment of the British East India Company. Now, let's see what Hamis Hashim has to say about this.
So it all started in the 16th century when the earliest British merchants came to our country, India, in the court of the Mughals. They were a medieval kingdom. They were actually an empire, one of the greatest medieval empires. It was in the 16th century that the Britishers came, but later on, in the 18th century, they actually started to govern our country, and they slowly introduced their culture, their system, and in that line, by around the middle of 19th century, they brought in English education system. That's how it all started.
Hamish Hashim stated that it all started in the 16th century when the earliest British merchants came to India. They were an empire medieval, known as one of the greatest medieval empires. Later in the 18th century, they started to govern India and slowly introduced their culture system. Around the middle of the 19th century, they brought English education system, and all of this was through the colonizers. The development of English in India, the first one is British colonial rule. The establishment of the English East India Company in the early 17th century marked the introduction of English to India. Over time, English became the language of administration, education, and law, especially after Lord Mackay's Minutes on Education in 1835, which advocated for English as the medium of instruction. Number 2 is the economic opportunities. Proficiency in English has been associated with better economic prospects in India. In recent decades, globalization has further amplified the importance of English as it serves as a key language in international business and technology sectors. Number 3, which is the cultural exchange. The interaction between British colonizers and Indians led to the emergence of Indian English, a distinct variety influenced by local languages and cultural nuances. This linguistic evolution reflects the blending of English with India's diverse linguistic landscape. Now, let's see what Hamis Hashim has to say about this.
Yeah, I've already mentioned that the British people or the British rulers who colonized India introduced the school education system, which was in English. So in 19th century, they brought in English education. Also, they brought in English judicial system. So the courts were working based on the English law. English law of natural justice, and also the fact that they used English as the medium. And until that point, Persian was the official language of India. But after that point, English in 1835, English was made the official language of India. That's how it got developed.
Hamis Hashim also stated that British people who colonizes India introduces the school education system. In the 19th century, they brought in English education and English judicial system. Courts were working based on the English law of natural justice. They used English as the medium language. And lastly, in 1835, English was stated the official language of India. Now, moving on to their teaching methods, which is the first one is grammar translation method. This traditional approach emphasizes reading and writing, focusing on grammar rules and vocabulary memorization. Number 2 is direct method. This method encourages teaching English directly without using the student's native language, promoting natural language acquisition. Number 3 is bilingual method. This approach uses the student's native language to explain meanings and concepts, facilitating a smoother transition to English proficiency. Moving on to the importance in the education system. The first one is medium of instruction. Many Indian schools, especially private institutions, use English as the primary medium of instruction, covering subjects beyond language learning. Number 2 is global connectivity. English serves as a link language, connecting individuals across linguistic and regional diversities within India and globally. Now, let's see what Hamis Hashim has to say about this.
English is actually started from very early age. In the kindergarten, we study the alphabets, and when we graduate into the primary level, we start to learn English sentences. So English is given more importance in certain places in India, even more than the original language. So it's very important. One's status in our country is measured based on the proficiency of that person in English language. So it's very important, and English is seen in many places as an elite language spoken by people of high standing.
Over, Hamis Hashim stated that younger generations start to learn English at an early age in the kindergarten and study the alphabets. Then, they graduate to the primary level and they start to learn English sentences. English is more important in certain places in India, even more than the region language. It's important one's status in India is measured based on the proficiency of that person in English. And lastly, Hamis Hashim stated that English is seen in many places as an elite language spoken by people of high standard. So this means many people in India view English proficiency as a pathway to higher social and economic status. To project sophistication and prestige, Indians often use English as a symbol of success. Now, moving on to the perception and use among younger generation. The first one is educational influence. English is increasingly emphasized in Indian education, with many schools adopting it as the primary medium of instruction. This focus has led to a higher proficiency among younger individuals. Number 2 is digital engagement. The younger demographic exhibits significant engagement with digital platforms where English predominates. A UNICEF survey highlighted that 57% of young people in India use the internet daily, compared to 27% of older individuals. However, there's differences from the older generation, which is the language proficiency. Studies indicate that English proficiency is higher among younger Indians. Approximately 25% of individuals aged 18 to 35 speak English, compared to 13% of those aged 51 to 65 years old. Now, let's see what Hamis Hashim has to say about this.
Yeah, it's very different. Actually, to be honest, the current generation speaks more English than the original language. So much so that we can call their mother tongue as English, not the original languages. And there's difference in the way the generations pronounce the words of English. For example, the older generations speak with a very indigenous accent mixed with the original language. But the modern generation speaks more Western accent.
Lastly, Hamis Hashim stated that the current generation speaks more English than the regional language. This can say their mother tongue is English. There's a difference the way newer generations pronounce the words of English. For example, the older generations speak in more indigenous accent mixed with the region language. However, newer generations speaks more Western accent. So, it is proven that based on my research and the interview that I conducted with Hamis Hashim is aligned. Now, moving on to the second aspect, which is the expanding power of English in the respective countries. So the first one is sectors dominated by English. So the first one is higher education and research rely heavily on English. Next is media and entertainment. English news, film, and digital content are widespread in English. The third one is technology and business. English is the primary language in IT and multinational corporations. Now, let's hear what Hamis Hashim has to say about this.
I've already mentioned that it is seen as a language spoken by the select few who are elite. So it is obviously used mainly in the judicial system. Courts in India even now have English as the most important language or prominent language, and also in industries, in the government, even government in India, there are two official languages. One is English and Hindi. So even after so many years after getting independence, we still have English. And other sectors include sports, commentary, and in high-end restaurants, everything is displayed in the language of English.
On what Hamis Hashim said, English language are spoken by the people who are elite and mainly used in the judicial system. Now, English is the most important language and prominent language, like in industries and in the government. In the government, there are two official languages, English and Hindi. Hamis Hashim also stated that other sectors including sports, commentary, and high-end restaurants, everything is displayed in the language of English. Next one is English in casual conversation. English is used as a link language in cities, based on urbanization and education. Next is media and technology. Social media and entertainment influence language usage. And the third one is social mobility. Speaking English is associated with higher status and prestige. Now, let's hear what Hamis Hashim has to say about this.
Yes, indeed. We have started using more and more English terms, so much so that we have forgotten some of the original terms for that particular word. And also, there is a system of using mixed form of regional and English languages that we switch between languages. Indians normally switch between English and the regional language. And we are seeing more and more of use of English language.
Next one, Hamis Hashim also stated that India started using more English terms and makes them forget some of the regional terms or that particular word. There's a system of using mixed form of regional, which is the regional language, and English languages. They switch between languages. This is known as code switching. Lastly, Hamis Hashim also stated that India is seeing more use of English language in their country. And the last one is the future of English in India. The usage of English is increasing because of education. More institutions adopting English medium instruction. And the globalization. It is essential for international business and communication. Now, let's hear what Hamis Hashim has to say about this.
English is becoming very, very important. For one, it is also, I've already mentioned that it's seen as a language of the elite. So it is becoming more and more important as people aspire for higher growth and they aspire height. So one of the ways they can reach height is through the use of and proficiency or the command they have in the language of English.
Lastly, Hamis Hashim also stated that English is becoming increasingly important in India because it is seen as the language of the elite. Also, many people aspire to higher social and economic status through English proficiency. Lastly, Hamis Hashim also stated that to appear sophisticated and prestigious, Indians often use English as a symbol of success. So it is proven that based on my research and the interview that I conducted with Hamis Hashim is aligned. Lastly, let's move on to the last aspect, which is the features of localized version of English, which is the phonological aspect. So first, I will be explaining about the A sounds, which is the first one is class, which is pronounced as class, like in British English rather than class in American. And fast is pronounced as fast instead of fast. Next is O sounds, tomato, which is in American is pronounced as tomato, versus in Indian or British is pronounced as tomato. And hot may sound like hot instead of hot. And the U sounds, which is burial, which is often pronounced as burrow instead of burial in British. And the last one is cousins. Sometimes it's pronounced as cousins instead of cousins. Now, let's hear what Hamis Hashim has to say about this.
Now, one of the words I can say is, the word adjacent, ADJACENT, adjacent.
Adjacent, okay.
Yeah. In India, people normally pronounce it adjacent. Adjacent.
Ah.
Yeah. With a very local tint to it.
Based on the interview, Hamis Hashim stated the word adjacent, which is in American English, it's pronounced as adjacent. But in Indian English, Hamis Hashim said that it's pronounced as adjacent. Adjacent. This is because the J sound Instead of J, it's become Ja, that's why it's becoming adjacent. And the vowel shapes, which is the R, which is fully pronounced as R. And the final T drop, which is sin, in American English is pronounced as sin, but in Indian English it's pronounced as sin. That's why in Indian English it's pronounced as adjacent. So that means my research is aligned with what Hamis Hashim said. Moving on to the conclusion. So the first one, it is widely used in daily life. English is commonly spoken and understood across India, making it an essential part of communication in urban areas and professional settings. Second, it is dominant in education, business, government, and media. English is the primary language in higher education, corporate sectors, government institutions, and mainstream media, ensuring accessibility to global knowledge and opportunities. Number 3, as it acts as a lingua franca. With over 1,600 languages spoken in India, English serves as a unifying language that enables people from different linguistic backgrounds to communicate effectively. Number 4, which is a key role to international relations and economy. English is crucial for global trade, diplomacy, and technology, helping India connect with the international community and maintain its status in the global economy. Number 5, legacy of British colonial rule. Due to its historical roots, English remains embedded in India's legal and administrative system, reinforcing its continued importance in governance and policy making. That's all from me. Thank you.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Husna Iman. I'm from the EC5A. My ID number is IDI 2211 and 100, and today I'll be presenting about Syria. So this is my subject background. His name is Fuad Abu Khalaf. He is from Syria, age 37, and his educational background is diploma in marketing and e-commerce. The reason of choice why I choose Syria because their rich heritage, unique tradition, and the resilience of their people. Syria's history, deeply influenced by ancient civilization, offer valuable insight into how culture evolves and adapts over time. So the first aspect is history, development, and current progress of English in Syria. So based on the person that I interviewed, he said English was introduced between World War II and France and UK occupation in 1950s. English is very important for doing business, security, medication, and education.
Between the Second World War and the French and English occupation in the Middle East area or in the Arab country area. So we can say it's between 1920 and 1930 or 1935. Use it much for business and for e-commerce. Not sorry for e-commerce, for business majority, and for the oil and gas, for technology, for medication, for education.
So based on the interview, he said the duration of time that English was introduced in Syria was in between 1920s to 1950s, right after World War II ended and France and UK occupation in the Middle East area. So based on the person that I interviewed, he said English become more stronger and much better, and also the education in English is more important for the younger generation. Due to the internet, social media, and technology, this can help them communicate with people outside of their country easier.
For sure now, like nowadays it's become much better and more stronger the education for English over there. And after the internet, after the computer, after all this, if like in Middle East they want the student or the young people or they want to know or they want to learn anything or they want to make a communication or connection with outside the country or outside the Middle East, for sure they need the English.
So based on the interviewee, English is very important in the education system for the younger generation because they can learn how to make a connection or communication with people outside of their country. So next, moving on, we're going to aspect number 2, the expanding power of English in Syria. Based on my research, mostly English is used in big city. For example, Damascus to do business with foreigner, but Syrian people more focus on doing business with local people. For example, the discovery of oil in Syria in 1930s attracted foreigners' investment, increasing the demand for English proficiency among local workers. English is crucial for the international trade, commerce, and communication with global partners. Nowadays, many job opportunities in Syria require a good command of English.
The capital city, the big city like Damascus, like Aleppo, like Hama, like Homs, the big city,
Based on the interviewee, English was introduced in Syria mainly because of business. As we all know, most of Middle East countries are rich with oil and gas. This can help them communicate way more better with foreign investors. But at the same time, English is not very commonly used in Syria because they are proud of using their own mother language. But these days, English becoming more important because of technology, education, and job. Based on my research, for Syrian, they only need to learn basic English so they can go for higher education.
Because actually, the Middle East and like everyone, he's proud with their own language or their mother language.
The interviewee said even they learn or speak English as their second language, Syrian people tend to be proud even way more of using their mother language, which is Arabic language. So moving on, we're going to aspect number 3, features of localized version of English in Syria. Based on my interviewee, he said V sounds are often pronounced as F in Syria, and P sounds are often pronounced as B.
Like example, we have little bit small. We use like the word very. We call it. We change the V to F. Like we say very, very much, very much. Or like some people, even in Saudi Arabia, not only in Syria, you find like some people call like the word Goga, they call it Jojal.
So based on the video, my interview pronounced pizza as biza, this as this, war as war, and last but not least, important as important.
Can you give me pizza? I don't important. Second World War and France.
So in conclusion, English is not widely spoken as Arabic, but it gradually gaining significance due to globalization. The interviewee perspective highlight both of the challenges and opportunities Syria faces in adapting to a more English proficient future while preserving its linguistic and cultural identity.
Hi everyone, my name is Muhammad Hari Amzar bin Ibrahim and my ID number is IDI2308059. Today I will be presenting about Somalia English, which is one of the country in expanding circle based on the interview that I have conducted. But before we begin, let's know more about my subject.
My name is Siham Ahmed and I'm from Somali. I'm currently doing psychology in APU. I haven't started, I just applied yet. In June, inshallah, I will. I've been living in Malaysia for over 3 years now. I am 20 years old.
So, this is my interviewee biodata. Her name is Siham Ahmed and she's 20 years old and her origin is Somalia and she has been living in Malaysia for over 3 years and now pursuing for psychology in Malaysia. The reason why Siham Ahmed is a suitable interviewee for Somali English due to her unique background and qualification. Firstly, educational background and language proficiency. She has studied in Malaysia. Siham has likely been exposed to an international academic environment where English is commonly used. Next, interest in psychology and communication. Her application to study psychology suggests a strong interest in human behavior and communication. Last but not least, young and engaged perspective. At 20 years old, she belongs to a generation actively engaging with global languages like English while maintaining cultural roots. Without wasting your time, let's look at the first aspect, which is the history, development, and current progress of English in Somalia. But I will start with history first. According to Habe in 1988, English was introduced to Somalia as the language of administration and education during British colonial rule. The northern region of Somalia, now known as Somaliland, was under British rule from 1884 to 1960. During this time, English was used as the language of administration, trade, and education in British Somaliland. Meanwhile, in the southern part of the country, which was under Italian rule, Italian was more dominant, with English being more prominent in the north and Italian in the south. Let's see what my interview will respond regarding these topics.
English was actually introduced in Somali during the British colonizing period, but that was for the northern part of Somali, which is called Somaliland. But for Somali, the southern part was colonized by Italians. So there's two different languages. So we have French, British, and Italian. But in the official language spoken in both all places is Somali, but the second language is different for each of them.
From her response, she said English was introduced to Somalia during the British colonial period, while northern Somalia, now known as Somaliland, was under British rule. Southern Somalia was under Italian rule. As a result, English had a stronger influence in Somaliland, whereas Italian was more common in the south. She mentioned after Somalia gained independence in 1960, Somali became the official language spoken in Somali and Somaliland, but Somalia's second language was Italian, later on changed to Arabic, whereas Somaliland's second language was English, and it is still English until now. So, to conclude, there is a strong alignment between my research findings and the perspectives shared by the interviewee. Let's proceed to the next part, which is development of English in Somalia. According to Cultural Orientation Resource Center, noted English has played an increasing role in Somalia's education systems, international relations, and media consumption. Firstly, in education and globalization. English is widely used in Somali universities, especially for scientific and technological studies, as most learning materials are in English. Next is international relations. Somalia relies on English for communication with international institutions like NGOs and foreign governments. Next is colonial influence. Under British rule in northern Somalia, English was the language of administration, governance, and education, shaping its early linguistic landscape. Last but not least, technology and social media. Internet and social media have increased English usage, particularly among youth, improving fluency through daily exposure to English language content. And let's see my interviewees respond on these topics.
First will be the colonization that introduced us to the different languages spoken in Somali. Second will be the international relationship with other countries, whether it's trading, participation in global organizations, and lastly, education and media. So even though different language, we still get educated by the languages and the teachers, and also how TikTok and Instagram and movies influence a lot of younger generations.
From her response, she said there are several factors have contributed to the development and persistence of English in Somalia. First is colonial legacy. The British colonial administration established English as a key language in governance and education. Next is international relations. Post-independence, Somalia's engagement in international diplomacy, trade, and participation in global organizations necessitate the use of English. She also said English is widely taught in schools and serves as the medium of instruction in many universities, also influenced by digital media like Instagram, TikTok, and movies. To conclude, there is a strong alignment between my research findings and the perspectives shared by the interviewee. Let's proceed to the next part, which is current progress of English in Somalia. According to International Policy Digest 2022, in Somalia, English instruction often focuses on rote memorization, with teachers translating materials into Somali for students to memorize, which can hinder their ability to apply English in real-world situations. This limits student understanding and practical use of the language, leading to predictable exam content. But according to Window Trust International 2023, Somaliland has implemented more comprehensive English teaching strategies, focusing on improving teachers' language proficiency and modern pedagogical techniques. In contrast, Somaliland improves English proficiency by training teachers in modern techniques and enhancing their language skills for better instruction in all key areas. The contrast in English language instruction between Somalia and Somaliland is evident, with Somalia often relying on traditional memorization techniques, while Somaliland is adopting more comprehensive and modern teaching methodologies. Let's see what my interviewee respond regarding this topic.
In Somali, when it comes to learning or teaching the English language, they often prioritize comprehension over practical communication skills. Teachers or lecturers frequently translate English text and materials into Somali for students to memorize, which can lead to a very predictable exam, and it also limits the students' ability to apply their knowledge in the real world. This, however, contrasts with the Somaliland's education system, where there are qualified teachers to focus on the students' development. The language proficiency includes speaking, listening, reading, and writing.
By her response, she said in Somalia, English language instruction often prioritizes comprehension over practical communication skills. This approach contrasts with Somaliland's education system, where qualified English teachers focus on developing students' overall language proficiency, including speaking, listening, reading, and writing. This difference in teaching methodologies highlight a disparity in educational approaches between the two regions. To conclude, there is a strong alignment between my research findings and the perspectives shared by the interviewee. Now, let's proceed to the next part. According to feast.org, 2018, young Somalis are increasingly fluent in English due to its role in education, career opportunities, and social media engagement. In urban areas, many are fluent using it alongside Somali in daily life and on social media. Higher education and online content drive this trend, with studies showing that social media helps improve their English proficiency. And according to LI 2021, all the Somalis, particularly those educated before the 1990s, have lower English proficiency as they were more exposed to Somali and Italian, though those with international experience tend to have better English skills. Research highlights a generational language gap, with younger Somalis increasingly adopting English while older generation had less exposure or necessity to learn it. Let's see my interviewee's response on this topic.
The older generation usually just speak the first language, but there's different parts. So I'll tell you the two different parts. For the Somali, we don't speak English in Somali. But in Somaliland, they do speak English, whether it's younger generation or older generation, because their schools, everything is like British system. They speak English, like their daily lives and everything. But for Somali, they only speak Somali. And they have their second language is Arabic. Before it was Italian, but now they switched to Arabic.
She said younger Somalis tend to gravitate towards English, influenced by American pop culture, including movies, music, and internet content. Conversely, the older generation, having grown up in a different cultural context, often retains a stronger connection to the Somali language. However, in Somaliland, English serves as the second language for the majority of the population in Somaliland, highlighting its importance in education and daily life. To conclude, there is a strong alignment between my research finding and the perspectives shared by the interviewee. Let's move on to the next aspect, which is expanding power of English. According to International Policy Digest 2023, English plays a crucial role in Somalia's education, business, diplomacy, and media sectors, particularly in universities, international trade, government communications, and online platform. First is education. English is the primary medium of instruction in universities, especially in fields like medicine, engineering, and business. However, many students struggle due to limited proficiency. Next is business and trade. English is essential for businesses dealing with foreign partners. Next is diplomacy. The Somali government uses English in dealings with other countries and international organizations, highlighting its importance in diplomacy. Last but not least, media and technology. Many Somali media outlets publish in English to reach a global audience and expand international outreach. Let's see what my interviewee responds regarding this topic.
So for the sectors, it would be education, international business, non-governmental organizations. Those are the most three sectors spoken in Somali, like used in English, because for normal people, they wouldn't want to learn different languages since everyone speaks one language. Only those that are interested or have a reason to learn are most likely to learn the English language.
From her response, she said English plays a significant role in various sectors, including education, international business, diplomacy, and non-governmental organizations. Its prevalence in higher education institutions and international organizations, and only those who have a reason will learn English. So, to conclude the responses, from my interview are aligned with my research findings. Now, let's move on to the next part. According to ICAR 2018, in Somalia, English is primarily used in educational and professional settings, while Somali remains the dominant language for daily conversations. Research suggests that even among Somali immigrants in English-speaking countries, Somali is preferred for informal interactions, indicating a similar trend within Somalia itself. Due to this, many Somalis who have lived in the country their entire lives may not develop strong English speaking skills. According to the EF English Proficiency Index, Somalia ranks 114 out of 116 countries, indicating very low proficiency in English. On the other hand, according to Luca Relli 2018, English is more commonly spoken in Somaliland, especially in urban areas. Schools in Somaliland emphasize English language education more than in southern Somalia, and as a result, many young people and professionals incorporate English into their daily conversations through a process called code switching. This means they mix Somali and English when speaking, particularly in discussions about education, business, and technology. In summary, while English is widely taught and used in formal settings across Somalia and Somaliland, it is more commonly spoken in daily conversation in Somaliland. This reflects the differences in educational approaches and English exposure between the two regions. Now, let's see my interviewees respond on this topic.
For the southern part, they usually just speak Somali. So the generation, maybe like few, like 5% of them do want to learn English, but the 90%, 95% do not wish to learn, and they just go on their days with Somali language. But for the Somaliland, everything of theirs is in English, the education, so it's more easy, and they do speak mixed language. So they speak Somali with English. So in a sentence, it's like mixed. So they have more exposure compared to the southern part.
From her response, she said most Somalis only speak their mother tongue and don't use English in daily life, and 95% of Somalis who grew up in Somalia can speak English. She also said in Somaliland, people mix English with Somali in everyday conversation, so there is a strong alignment between my research findings and the perspectives shared by the interviewee. Now, let's proceed to the last aspect, which is phonological features. According to Muhammad 2019, Leventhal and Ching 2022, Somali accent English is characterized by phonological features influenced by the Somali language, including consonant and vowel substitution. Challenges with consonant clusters, they may insert an extra vowel, such as pronouncing street as e-street. Let's see how my interviewee pronounce it.
E-school. E-school.
As you can hear that, she pronounced school as e-school. Because Somali follows a more consistent spelling to sound relationship, unlike English, where some letters are silent, Somali pronunciation closely follows the written form of words. Somali vowels have consistent pronunciation, unlike English vowels, which vary. This makes words with silent letters or shifting sounds difficult, such as pronouncing knife as knife. Let's see how my interviewee pronounce it.
Decision. Decision.
As we can hear that, a word decision pronounced as decision instead of decision. These differences arise because Somali speakers may pronounce each syllable clearly rather than using English reduced vowel sounds and connected speech pattern. Now, let's move on to the next part, which is consonant. According to Muhammad 2019, these differences arise due to the absence of certain English phonemes in Somali, leading to phonetic adaptation such as replacing p with b and inserting vowels to break up consonant clusters. The Somali language lacks the p phoneme, leading speakers to substitute it with b. Consequently, words like park may be pronounced as bark. Similarly, the v sound is absent in Somali and is often replaced with f, so very might be pronounced as very. The z sound usually replaced by s, so zebra is pronounced as zebra.
A Bible. A Bible.
Visit. Visit. To.
As we can hear that she pronounced people as bible, visit to visit, and zoo to zoo. These pronunciation differences occur because Somali lacks certain English sounds, leading speakers to substitute them with the closest equivalent in their native language. To conclude all of this, English is increasingly important in Somalia, especially in education, business, and diplomacy. Next, English is not a common language for daily communication. Somali remains the main language for most people, while English is used in formal settings. Next, English is more common in some regions than others. And last but not least, my interviewee is classified as acrolag. She speaks a highly formal and educated variety of English. Bye and thank you.